think we can all agree that UK politics is not exactly where we want it to be. And there's so many things that we all believe we could do better. Now, although I agree with some of the things that Conservatives say, I disagree with a lot of them. And I agree with some of the things Labour say, I disagree with a lot of them. So I find it very difficult to vote for a party that I believe would have any meaningful change in the country. This week we're going to talk about UK politics, and we're going to go through some of the positive and negative aspects of the UK's political landscape. Some of the things that have happened in the past and some of the things that are going to happen in the future. In the UK right now, the time for change has come. The politics of the United Kingdom is characterized by its parliamentary system of government, which is based on the principles of supremacy of the House of Commons and the lower house of the UK's Parliament. The UK is a constitutional monarchy, with its king serving as the head of state, although this role is largely ceremonial. The UK has a multi-party system, with two main parties being the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. The Conservative Party generally advocates for conservative and liberal policies, including free market economics, low taxes, and a smaller role for government in people's lives. While the Labour Party generally advocates for progressive policies including social welfare, higher taxes on the wealthy, and a greater government involvement in people's lives. The UK is also composed of several devolved nations, including Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, each with their own separate political systems and assemblies. In recent years, the issue of Scottish independence has become a major political issue, with the Scottish National Party advocating for Scotland to become an independent country. Brexit. The UK's decision to leave the European Union has had a significant impact on UK politics in recent years. The decision to leave the EU was highly controversial and deep, with proponents arguing it would allow UK to take back control of its laws and borders, while opponents argue that it would harm the UK economy and international standing. Overall, UK politics is characterized by a highly competitive, often divisive and increasingly polarized political landscape, with major issues such as Brexit and Scottish independence continuing to shape political discourse and debate. The UK is a multi-party system, the Conservatives on the one side and Labour on the other side. There's certain things that the Conservatives talk about that I agree with, and there's certain things that the Labour Party talk about that I agree with. And I feel like a person like myself who wants to sit down the middle and make the right decisions for the country, even if it might make my life a little bit harder, I don't believe there's a political party out there that represents me. I don't believe there's a political party out there that represents 90% of the British population. The problem with the political parties now, the Conservatives have so much history and Labour Party has so much history that it's very difficult for people to overlook that and trust them. And the problem is all the other little parties that surround them are even further at the left and right. And in recent years, the Scottish have been pushing for independence, which has become a major political issue for the country, especially at a time now where the country is more looking inwards to solve its problems. Now is not the time for our nations to infight. Now is the time for our nations to pull together and solve the problems to create to put United Kingdom back where it needs to be, at the top of the food chain. We have other political issues that have divided the population, namely Brexit. People democratically voted for Brexit, and it hasn't been delivered properly. We've had a washed down, watered down version of Brexit that is not what the UK public want. And there are a lot of issues for and against continuing with Brexit. The problem is, over time, and the infighting now has taken away a lot of the benefits because people haven't seen the benefits, because we haven't actually achieved it properly. But what we cannot do is we cannot go backwards and go against the will of the people. And this is my biggest problem with the parliamentary system of government. The parliamentary system of government, where the two main parties will not work together on issues that solve the country's problems. What they prefer to do is watch the other party fail and then tell the other party how they would have done better or how the other party had done a problem. Because they avoid, block, and do everything they can to stop things from going smoothly. And that's the name of the game. Ultimately, it's a political game. 4 years, work in cycles to try and get in and out of power. So no changes really is made because it is very difficult to do something in 4 years. Or it is very difficult to do something if your opposition party doesn't want you to succeed. And this is the major problem with UK politics, or politics in the world, is once a government is elected, they need the backing of the opposition. And we don't get that because people have got their own narratives, their own objectives, and they're not the best interests of the UK people. Overall, UK politics is characterized as a highly competitive, often divisive, and increasingly polarized political system, an increasingly polarized political landscape, with major issues like Brexit, Scottish independence continuing to shape UK politics. Now, don't get me wrong, there are loads of positive aspects of UK politics. You know, UK is a democratic country. We have a really robust political system based on our parliamentary democracy. This allows people like myself to vote for a representative who we believe best suits our beliefs, values, and objectives. However, there is a negative side to this system in which the fact is you can't vote for an independent person who has your ideology. You need to vote for a party who has your ideology. So rather than voting for specific people who we believe have our ideology, we end up having to vote for political parties who only share a percentage of our ideology. The UK has a strong rule of law. Regardless of our social status, we all have to conform to the law. This ensures the country remains stable, which is essential for businesses and investors. The other really positive aspect of UK politics is we have been a democracy for generations now. We have a very peaceful transfer of power and a relatively low level of corruption, although we have seen in recent years there is still corruption. And ultimately, where there is power and there's money, there is always going to be a certain element of corruption. It is very hard to root out all corruption. However, the levels we see in this country are nowhere near the levels of corruption that are happening in other places of the world. And again, the stability of our political system is really attractive to investors, as it ensures governments can stay focused on long-term goals. The UK has a comprehensive welfare system. Whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, the welfare system of the UK is probably one of the best welfare systems in the world. And it's really there to defend the vulnerable people, the low-income families, the disabled, and the elderly. The idea of having that safety net ensures that everybody in the country gets to live with dignity. And that is something we should be truly proud of. And that is something we should continuously try to ensure we protect. Because that is humanity. It can't be unlimited amount. It has to be controlled within the receipts of the country. The UK has always been a major player in the world, in the geopolitical politics of the world. We're a little island nation. We have a small population of 68 million, yet we're one of the biggest players on the world political scene. And that is where we need to stay. And by initiating Brexit, it'll allow us to make more headway into the rest of the world rather than Europe. Europe are always going to trade with the UK. We are always going to trade with Europe. We're neighbours. It's convenient. It's easy. However, there is much better places to trade with than Europe. They have the same climate as us. They have the same resources as us. We need to make partnerships further afield to get the resources we need to build a bigger, stronger economy. And lastly, one of the main positives of living in the UK is what I'm doing right now. And that is our ability to have freedom of speech, to speak out against government, to speak out against the things we don't believe in, and to do what we believe is right. The idea of being able to speak your mind without the fear of prosecution and ensuring that there's always an opportunity for open and robust debate on issues that are affecting the country is one of the cornerstones of what makes Great Britain great. And I can talk about countries right now that we see every day on the news that don't have that liberty. You know, China, Russia are the big ones. Freedom of speech is important and we should fight to hold that. And we have to remember that government should not be passing any laws that stifle freedom of speech, even if we agree with the government's reason why. And I'll tell you why. Because one day you might not have a government that you believe in power, and you don't want them to stop your ability to question them in a public forum. As UK politics is, we also have a number of negative aspects of UK politics. Now, right now, polarization is probably one of the biggest issues we are facing in the UK. You know, we have deep divisions between the major parties and their supporters. And this leads to a lack of consensus when we're making difficult to pass meaningful legislation. And this is one of the biggest problems we're experiencing right now in the country. Look at Brexit. This is a prime example of two sides of the fence not working together to find solutions that best suit the country. Any idiot like myself can go online and read a whole bunch of government published papers, and then go into the European Union countries and read their government published papers to see that the opportunities are there. Polarization has caused a massive rift between the people of the country and reduced our belief in our government, because we are not seeing government act out the will of the people. And this is a huge, huge, huge problem. Because if people see that government aren't following what they believe or what they voted for, then that's a massive letdown in the country. And that will lead to the demise of the political system. So regardless of whether you were a Brexiter or a Remainer, it doesn't matter. The vote was passed. It is the job of government, whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, to go and get the best possible deal you can for the country. No questions asked, no personal agenda. That is the objective, because that is our political system. If a vote is passed, and this is democracy, we don't always agree with democracy. And this is the problem with democracy. There is a negative to democracy, is if the majority wants something that you know is not right or you believe is not right, you can't go against the population. It has to be enacted. Otherwise, your whole political structure will collapse. So, what has happened, despite a stable political system, we have one of the lowest voter turnouts in the world. And I believe that this is because the two main political parties are too far away from the centre line. And the centre line is where most people are. A majority of the population just want to do what's best for the country and have an as easy and enjoyable life as possible. Most people accept that there's always going to be hardship. Most people accept that that's a natural fact of life. We can't always be wrapped in bubble wrap, and we can't always feel like everything is just going to be right. But there always has to be a plan, and there always has to be a vision that we have to work towards. Every business has it, every country should have it, every person should have it. You have your personal vision for your life, your company you work for has the corporate vision for the business, and the country should have the country's vision for the country in the future. And at the moment, I don't actually know what the vision is for our country. So we've had loads of corruption recently. COVID-19 was a particular instance where government had been caught out, funding their mates and giving, government contracts to people who probably shouldn't have got them. Now, this is, again, a perfect example of why government should not be involved in any business. Government is not there to make jobs. Government is not there to protect industry. Government is there to act out the will of people and to keep people safe. People are responsible to protect themselves and keep themselves safe. And industry and businesses are responsible to their investors to keep the business profitable. And that is how the system works. There's three interconnecting systems there, and government only touches the small bits. And essentially interventionism causes more problems with corruption than we're allowed to believe. Again, the biggest problem in the UK is we have a massive amount of centralised power. Most decisions are made in Westminster, and sometimes those decisions do not really reflect the need of the rest of the country. We've seen in recent years the levelling up and moving government businesses into other parts of the country to improve those economies. And a more decentralized way of managing government would improve that exponentially and improve most areas of the country. Smaller government is a much more efficient government. And I think that is the most important thing I've taken away from this week's book, is we need to make government much more streamlined and smaller and really focused on the issues on the issues that government should be involved in. Issues of recent years, we've had a lot of austerity where the government have stopped spending money in areas where they had been before. And this has led to a massive, decline, loads of jobs lost. But ultimately, government shouldn't be spending unnecessary money in any industry. And the government should be a really lean, really efficient system. And I still believe there is areas to improve. And there's areas where we can reduce government spending massively. And yes, people are going to lose their jobs, and yes, people are going to be affected. But the country is going to become stronger from it. And new jobs will appear. That is how industry and privatization and capitalism works. If there is a need and a demand, it'll always be met because there's an opportunity to make a profit. And again, I've already discussed Brexit, but Brexit needs to get done and it needs to get finished. And the country needs to accept what happened and move on. And there's a lot of positive things that can come from Brexit. There's a lot of new synergies that the country can make away from Europe that can put Great Britain back on the map. Bigger alliances with Canada, with Australia and New Zealand for a start. If we could put together a treaty between, those four countries, us and those three other countries, that could be one of the strongest military alliances, one of the strongest economic alliances, and one of the largest contributors to natural resources that the country needs. Europe has no natural resources. The next country that has natural resources is Ukraine. And Great Britain is already there, building a relationship, helping the Ukrainians defend themselves and hopefully one day get their freedom back. Because the opportunities for our country in Ukraine are huge. The natural resources in Ukraine are massive. They're undercapitalized and they haven't been used because the Russians haven't been interested in them. They've been developing theirs on their side. There is an opportunity here for Great Britain. Brexit is not as negative as everybody makes out to be. We're always going to trade with our partners in Europe. The UK is the second biggest economy in Europe. And unfortunately, with the demise of Germany, which is coming, due to the fact they can't get enough power and enough energy to run their market, they're a landlocked country and they've got no access to these resources, Great Britain could end up being the largest economy in the next 5 to 10 years, if we play our cards right. But we need to work together in order to achieve that. Now, looking at the UK politics through the eyes of a libertarian, there's a lot of positives and there's a lot of negative to the libertarian outlook. A libertarian style government in the UK would flourish. And as long as we as a country could balance our individual freedom and our social responsibility, economic growth, we could see an increase in innovation and entrepreneurship, which would stimulate economic growth. The libertarian style government would enforce people to take responsibility for their own lives and stop looking to other people to solve their problems. This would create a country of motivated individuals. It would allow people to believe in themselves and make the right choices for themselves. And the right choices for them is not always the right choices for everybody else. And that autonomy allows people to enjoy and make the life they want. By reducing government bureaucracy and interventionism in business, will create a more competitive market where smaller players can enter the marketplace. At the moment, legislation and government control stops small producers from entering the marketplace. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. And this is something that's quite a big thing and quite dear to me, is food. Now, let's say you're a small farmer. Let's say you have 5 acres of land and you can produce, let's say, 300 chickens a month. Now, in America, you could cull those chickens yourselves, provided you meet all the criteria, and you could sell those chickens directly to your customers, cutting out the middleman. In the UK, you can't. You have to take those chickens to an abattoir, and they have to kill those chickens. So they kill those chickens, and they charge the farmer X amount per chicken. They then usually buy the meat at a wholesale value. So the poor farmer is not making nearly as much as he could be making if he was selling the chicken directly to me. And this is an opportunity. This is where government intervention causes these problems. It creates big industries, big abattoirs, big farms, but it takes out little operators where they were producing much better quality product, much more nutritious chicken, at a fraction of the price you'd be paying in the supermarket, but twice the quality. Or even the same price you're paying in the supermarket, yet twice the quality. And this is where we're letting ourselves down. Government intervention in these types of industries is stopping the country from flourishing. So there is massive potential that if the country adopted a libertarian style government, it could be something that we haven't seen since post World War II. However, there are several drawbacks to libertarianism, and I don't deny that, a capitalistic system, we see it now, it does create inequalities. Successful businessmen do become ultra rich. But what we always forget is, the Jeff Bezoses and the Bill Gates and the Elon Musks, for instance. Those guys are worth a huge amount of money. But if you look at how many people they employ, so Elon Musk and his three businesses, I think SpaceX and Tesla, he employs nearly 200,000 engineers. That is a huge amount of positive capital in the economy that these rich, ultra-rich people bring. I have no idea what the global employee size of Microsoft is or Amazon. And regardless of what we think, those are a huge amount of jobs that are created by a capitalistic laissez-faire system. But imagine we removed the bureaucracy and allowed smaller players to enter at the bottom level and compete. Because no matter how good a big business you are, you can't compete with personal service. You can't compete with an owner-run business dealing with their customers and treating them with the respect that any small business owner understands. People love to be respected. People love good service. And by government interfering in business stops that. Libertarians are against social welfare. I am not against social welfare. So for me, there has to be an area there that has to be adapted to suit the beliefs and the needs of the great British public. We expect and want free healthcare, the best we can afford as a country. We want and expect education for our children, the best the country can afford. We want and expect to be looked after when we're old, with the best way that the country can afford. And when times are hard, or we're not earning enough, or life's kicked us, we expect to be looked after to the point where we don't die, we don't starve. And there's certain things that the country could do better. And I believe it would do better if the government adopted the libertarian outlook. In our current political model, our population needs to keep growing, to keep our economy growing. We need to increase taxes every year because we have debt. And we have all these social systems that cost money to run. But what if we linked all these systems to a fixed percentage of our receipts? Our population is not growing at the moment. We are actually in a small decline. At the moment, we can soak it up with immigration. But we need a greater pool of contributors. We need more industry, more business, and we need to create more industry. Industry is important, but in order to create industry, you need workers and you need resources. And we need to get natural resources. Natural resources are predominantly found along the equator. Asia, Africa, South America. We need to build relationships with these countries to get resources, so we can add value as a country. That's what we do best. We add value. We have the brain power and the technology to make top quality products, or even the machinery that makes top quality products. The UK two-party system needs to be revamped. It is not working. There is too much history between these two parties, and they're not inclusive enough for the mainstream centre. We need a party focusing on what's right for the country, not just right for the people. The country should be the most important thing. The people are second. The people make the country. And if the people's views and goals and ambitions and everything align with where the country needs to go, the country will be great. If the people don't care about the country will never be great, and we'll end up some socialist country like Russia or China. We also need to change the way we see government as the people who are in charge of our lives. They're not. We're in charge of our lives. We make the decisions. We have the ability to read and interpret this data. Stop watching the BBC and Sky and the political commentary, and start reading and start looking at the problems around you, because you can see them. You've experienced them. How many people have tried to go to the doctors? Or how many times have you tried to get into the dentist? You know, the problems are all around us. You see them. Start researching them. Why is that a problem? Don't just blame the government. It's not the government always. Sometimes it's people. Sometimes it's state of mind. Sometimes it's the way people think. And until you start digesting and thinking about the actual issues, and you stop looking at government to solve them, the answers come evident very quick. And again, we need to have more children. We need to encourage our children. Like, I've had my children. I'm too old to have children. I've passed that. But we need to encourage our children to have children. And we need to make it possible for them to have as many children as possible, because they are our future. They are the future of this country. And we need our children and our children's children and our children's children's children to make this country great again. And until then, we need to accept that we need to bring people's children in and people's children's children in. Continuously grow our population, or at least maintain our population size. I think ideally right now, the way I see it is, if we get our population to around 70 million, mostly consumers, import another 2 million consumers ages 20 to 45, skilled, trained, educated. That could do a lot for the country. But people aren't going to want to come to a country that's broken, polarized, and negative. We have loads going for us in the country. We're not as racist as everybody makes us out to be. We're a really inclusive country. We have good systems, we have good hearts, we have good people. We just need to get that all in the right place and focus all the negativity out the picture and focus on the positive stuff. But we need a vision. We don't have a political leader giving us a vision. You look at the great guys, that we all, run, Steve Jobs and, Elon Musk. They all have a vision. They all have something that they work towards, and they get all of us rally behind them. And we want them to succeed. Where is our political party that's giving us that vision that we want to rally behind and succeed? Rather than talking about all the negative stuff. Talk about the plan for the future. Acknowledge the negative stuff. We need to know about the negative stuff. Stop pushing it under the rug. But as a nation, we need to pull together. We need a vision, and we need to work towards that vision. And we need to stop being so selfish. Hardship is hardship, but out of all good hardships come really easy times. And we've had it easy for far too long. So that brings this episode to an end. Thank you for taking this time to watch my video, and I always appreciate any feedback. So till next time.